Welcome to the WORKOLOGY podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrill, founder of WORKOLOGY.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of WORKOLOGY.
Welcome to the WORKOLOGY podcast sponsored by Clear Company. For mid-sized companies in particular, growth is getting tougher in the face of new market dynamics. Those include rising consumer expectations, increased competition, and digital disruption. All of these present a challenge for growing companies when it comes to the employee experience and engagement. A 2018 McKinsey study called Becoming a CEO reports that talent is a top priority for CEOs. Frankly, I am happy about that. It's about time. The survey asked newly promoted CEOs what they wished they could have done in hindsight when they were first in the role as CEO. And 72% said they should have focused more on cultivating, growing, and engaging talent in their organizations. The question on my mind has been, if talent is the biggest focus of today's CEO, how does employee engagement align with this? Today I'm joined by Chirag Shah. He's the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Growth Markets at Cornerstone On Demand. Chirag leads the company's strategy for both the Asia Pacific and Japan region, as well as the global small and medium-sized business segment, two of Cornerstone's largest growth investments. Chirag, welcome to the WORKOLOGY podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Before we dive into employee engagement, can you give us a little bit of background on what led you to your current role at Cornerstone On Demand?
Absolutely. So I started my career as an investment banker many years ago. I did that for a little bit, and I decided that I wanted to do something a little bit different. I was a Bay Area kid. I grew up in the heart of San Francisco and wanted to be in technology since I was young. And so I ended up getting connected to Adam Miller, who's the founder and CEO of Cornerstone On Demand many years ago while I was still a banker, and had a conversation with him about what he was trying to build at Cornerstone. And it really centered around, learning and developing employees. And I found that to be very, very exciting. I thought I wanted to get involved with the business. He was actually in a position where he needed somebody of my background to help take the company public. So the first job that I had when I joined the company in 2009, August of 2009, was to try to take the company public. And for the first 18 to 24 months of my tenure at Cornerstone, that's exactly what I did, was drive the IPO process for Cornerstone, including coordinating with all the bankers and lawyers and other individuals involved in that process to, again, help the company go public. We ended up doing that in March of 2011. After March of 2011, I took on a strategic finance role with the business where I was overseeing financial planning and investor relations and corporate development and a couple of other smaller functions. And then one day, and this will sort of tie into the conversation today about employee engagement, one day I woke up and I said to myself, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I didn't want to be in finance or had no aspirations of becoming a CFO long term. I actually wanted to do something more on the operating side of the business. And so I ended up having that conversation with Adam. And it was at that point that I took over the small and medium-sized business team for Cornerstone as the general manager. And later in early 2018, took over the Asia Pacific and Japan region. And today, as you said, my scope includes both of those businesses, which are the two largest growth investments for Cornerstone.
What an interesting path to what we're talking about today. And I find this fascinating because when you think about human capital and the business of talent, it's really hard to kind of put a financial number, dollar number on what an employee does for an organization. And that's your background. And now you are talking with us about high growth companies and employee engagement.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really interesting how, what I do and my experience sort of intertwines so closely with the topic today. So I'm really excited about having this discussion with you.
Yeah, you're the subject matter expert for sure, because nobody knows high growth more than you based on your experience as an investment banker and then with taking Cornerstone public. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, just to put things in perspective, when I joined the business back in 2009, we had about 100 employees. When I actually initially started with Adam in 2008, we had about 50 employees, and today we have around 2,100. So things have certainly grown quite a bit. It's been exciting to be part of that growth story here at Cornerstone, and now building new growth stories with both Asia Pacific and Japan as well as SMB. So that's why I get excited every day to do my job. Is I came to Cornerstone initially to help build something. We did that, and now I'm continuing to do that with these two new markets that we're in.
Well, I'm excited for all the nuggets of wisdom that you're going to be sharing with us. So let's kind of pull back a little bit and talk at a basic level about, if you could talk with us about what managing growth markets involves.
Yeah, so my mandate at Cornerstone is really to help us develop businesses in both Asia Pacific and Japan and SMB. And what I do day to day is strategize on how we can effectively do that, right? So we have a presence in both the Asia Pacific and Japan market as well as the SMB segment. That presence has been growing for years. And as you know, and as most companies who are in a growth mode know, it gets harder to grow every year. You have the law of large numbers. You have to build your business on a bigger number every single year if you're continuing to grow, and that becomes more and more challenging. And so, what I spend my time doing is strategizing on how we can continue our growth trajectory by either adding new people or going into new markets or building relationships with new partners or a variety of different things. And so that's really the genesis of my role here at Cornerstone, is to think about how we can continue building a growth story in both of the markets that I oversee. And that growth story is incredibly important to the future of our business because we actually have done very well in the US and EMEA. And so we are looking to continue our growth trajectory by investing in these two new markets. We certainly see additional potential in both the US and EMEA markets, but we don't have as much of a growth opportunity there because we're so mature as we do in Asia Pacific and Japan and the SMB segment. And so, it's incredibly important for us as a growth company to be able to tap into both these markets effectively and continuously grow our presence in each one of them in the years to come. And so I am, always just thinking about new avenues for us to tap into to be able to do that.
So when you're working with the SMB and these mid-sized companies in particular, what challenge are you seeing for rapidly growing organizations when it comes to workforce management and talent?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge that rapidly growing organizations face is adding high caliber talent to help fuel their growth, while continuing to develop existing talent and making them feel like they're still contributing just as meaningfully to the business, right? So as you're getting bigger and bigger every single year, you're typically getting more and more granular with the type of work that you're having your employees do. And that's because the organization is getting more sophisticated, and so you have to just have a deeper level of focus on each thing that you do as a business. But you're also trying to grow and trying to find ways to optimize every area of the business. And so it's sort of a necessary thing. But what that leads to is employees who maybe have been with the company for a while, sometimes feeling like they're not making as big of a contribution as they used to, right? If you're a 20 employee organization, you might have people at your business who have a very, very broad scope. And as you grow into a 50, 100, 200, 500 person organization, that scope is naturally going to get a little bit smaller. So finding ways to keep those type of employees engaged, those existing employees, while also attracting high caliber talent to complement your existing employees is the biggest challenge that I think organizations today that are in growth mode have. And it's not an easy one to solve, but we've been through it as a business, and we've made some mistakes along the way, but I think we've done a pretty good job of finding a way to balance both those priorities, and that's why we are where we are today.
So you lead a global team all over the world, people in different countries and geographic areas, time zones. How do you keep those employees engaged across the world? Is there a secret that you and your team have uncovered?
I don't think there's a secret, to be honest. I mean, I think the key, and this is not necessarily just something that I've done with my teams, but I think it's something that many of our business leaders across Cornerstone have done effectively, is really trying to continuously maintain a pulse of the voice of the employee, right? Understanding what your employees are looking for. And sometimes that will vary by team, by geography, You'll just have different types of needs that employees are looking for. For example, in Japan, my employees are looking for things that are completely different sometimes than what my employees here in the U.S. are looking for. So having that pulse on your employee base and just maintaining a dialogue with them to get feedback on what you need to do to continuously optimize the employee experience is what I've tried to do, and I think what many of our other leaders have tried to do to ensure that we're developing the right culture within our business, but also creating the right employee experience for them to continuously feel like they're able to add value to the business and grow their own careers.
I love that you're talking about checking in with the pulse, because sometimes it's as simple as just touching base with those employees wherever they are within your organization.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I spend most of my time doing. In fact, when I head out to Asia Pacific and Japan, we have, several offices that I go to across that region. And whenever I go there, I make it a point to spend time with the employees and have conversations with them to get feedback about what we can do to maintain the type of culture that I've been so excited to be a part of for so many years, all across the world. Where we're trying to build our businesses. And likewise with our SMB team, And I think one of the things that Cornerstone has done really, really effectively, and our CEO likes to say this all the time, and I've sort of really taken it on as our mantra in terms of how we think about our culture, is we like to define our culture as opposed to having a culture by default. So we've really defined what type of culture we want, and that's not something that's just U.S. centric or Europe centric. It's a global culture that we've decided to create, and there's certainly certain nuances to that culture across the world. But what we've refused to do is just have our culture become something based on who we hire. Instead, we've decided to define it and then hire people who fit that culture, and we've done that effectively all over the world. And that's why again, we have a very consistent culture in terms of the type of people that we have all over the world and in any country that we operate in, but also have some degree of localization with respect to what we do from an employee initiative perspective to ensure that it aligns with cultural differences and the like. So
I want to shift back a little bit, thinking about us as HR leaders, because that's the majority of the audience who's listening to the podcast, and they're supporting companies who are undergoing this rapid growth and this evolution that you've been talking about. And we have a tendency to shift into high gear and just focus on recruiting and hiring. We're filling the leaky bucket. We're bringing in the new people. You talked a little bit about this, but I want to know, how do you get your managers, your leaders within your organization to balance the need not to just be focused on hiring, but to focus on these employee engagement initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really important for managers within the organization to understand the impact that employee initiatives have on the success of the organization, right? So I actually like to talk about it in a very analogous way to how we think about building our business. Our existing clients are just as important as new clients in developing our growth story. We don't want to be in the business of recycling revenue and replacing existing clients with new clients every year. That's not a great growth strategy. And in the same way, I think with employees, it's important to as a leader, as a business leader, think about their employee experience, actively on a day-to-day basis and how you can improve it and optimize it, because you want your employees to stay with you. And creating a success story, like we have at Cornerstone, is not really possible without maintaining strong retention of your employee base. And so, doing that requires you to actively think about that employee experience and making sure that you're, again, optimizing it every day, getting feedback from your employees to help you do that, and also obviously attracting good talent to supplement the workforce that you already have. So, I really think that business leaders need to understand how losing good people can impact them negatively, or I guess said differently and maybe said more positively, how keeping good people can continue to fuel the growth trajectory of the business. And if they understand that, they understand the strategic nature of the employee experience and how important it is to a company's trajectory and overall growth story, they can they can do wonders with their business long term. But they need to understand that. And I think we've done a really good job at Cornerstone of ensuring that our business leaders understand how strategic HR and employee initiatives are to the success of the organization long term. And that's why we've just always invested in the employee experience and doing as much as we can to develop the right culture and give our employees the right experience to mold their careers in the way that they want to.
Let's take a reset. This is Jessica Miller Merrill, and you're listening to the WORKOLOGY podcast, sponsored by Clear Company. Today, we're talking about high growth companies, creating a great culture, and focus on employee engagement with Chirag Shah.
This episode has been sponsored by Clear Company, a complete talent management software provider. Clear Company's software solutions include award-winning applicant tracking, onboarding, and performance management solutions. Hire, retain, and engage more top talent with Clear Company.
I want to dive a little bit deeper on improving the employee experience and how this has fed into the growth of your company or the company that you work with, Cornerstone On Demand, and then also your clients. But first, can you talk maybe us through some HR initiatives that you've been a part of that support this kind of employee engagement for long-term growth?
Yeah, I mean, one of the initiatives that we do at Cornerstone that I always love to talk about whenever I'm talking about our culture and our employee experience here is Development Day. So we have something called Development Day, which is basically a day where people across the business get to teach other employees about things that they're interested in. Sometimes those topics could be related to work, and sometimes they're unrelated to work. At a recent Development Day, we had a beer making class that one of our employees wanted to have or host with all of our employees to teach them how to make beer. And then on another day or another part of that same Development Day, we had a class on finance and on how to think about our financial model at Cornerstone. So it's a fun experience that we've created for employees that allows them to kind of touch on a number of different topics throughout the day. But what it does is it brings everybody together and fosters a culture of learning and taking an interest in what other people are doing and really understanding how different parts of the business operate and creating kind of more of a holistic knowledge base within our set of employees of how the organization works. So that is something that I think is unique. I've never heard of that at other companies, but it really has been tremendously successful here at Cornerstone, and something that our employees every single quarter, we do it once a quarter. Every single quarter, our employees are looking forward to that, and all of the classes fill up very, very quickly. So that's one example. I think the other thing that, and this is less of maybe initiative and more of just how we think about our workforce, internal talent mobility is something that we've always fostered at Cornerstone. I would say I am a prime example of internal talent mobility. I've moved around a lot during my career here. My latest move was obviously moving from finance to the operating side and doing what I'm doing with S&P in Asia Pacific and Japan. But that's something that we have so many examples of here at Cornerstone. Different employees going from one function to another, or going from one area of their function to another area of their function. And I think what it does for the workforce is really gives them a sense for what their opportunity is here at Cornerstone, that it isn't necessarily always defined by, just what their expertise is or what they've done in the past, but can be redefined based on what their interests are and where they want to take their career going forward. I think that's really important because it creates a different level of motivation for your employees than you would otherwise have, right? Because they know that if they work hard and they simply just focus on doing what they're doing really well, that can create new opportunities for them and take their careers in new directions that they may not have expected them to go in. And so that's been something that I think has been a hallmark of our business for a long time. Again, we have many, many examples of employees who have done exactly what I've done across the business. And it really, I think, serves as a motivating factor for our employees to work harder and contribute to the organization in more and more meaningful ways.
I have been doing a lot of writing on internal talent mobility. I feel like it's a huge area that employers, just an opportunity for them to be able to continue to grow and engage those employees who are really part of the family. And as they evolve, their careers with your organization can do too. I love that you guys are doing that, and I love that you're empowering employees to talk about their brew making experiences, and then you flip on over to like the P&L. I mean,
exactly.
That's a great environment and culture.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's so fun to watch, employees be successful in one area and then take that success and move it to another area of the business. It's great for them because they get to take their career again in a direction that they may not have thought they could go into. But it's also oftentimes great for the business, because you get to bring to sales. I'll use my own example. I mean, we didn't have anyone within the sales organization or the go-to-market organization or function that had a finance background. And so now, when we have discussions with finance as a go-to-market function about how to do things within our organization, we actually have our own informed point of view that I try to help drive, and finance obviously has their point of view, but it really helps the organization, I think, become better and more effective in different areas when you have, different types of knowledge that you bring in to different functions, as opposed to, within sales, just having everybody have a sales background. That creates, just one perspective, I think, generally, whereas when you have that internal talent mobility that you foster, you're able to take, again, different experiences and bring them into areas that they would otherwise not be able to be a part of. And I think that makes the organization better and more thoughtful overall.
Diversity of thought and diversity of experience is so important as in competitive advantage in the business market.
Absolutely.
Well, let's kind of take a step back here and think about maybe we're an HR leader and we aren't working at Cornerstone. Unfortunately, we should be, but we aren't. And so maybe we want to get that C-level buy-in for some of these programs that you're talking about, like a focus on internal talent mobility. How do we work with or get our leadership teams excited and on board with something like this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think one of the things, and this is less, I guess, advice for HR, but something that I think CEOs and just organizational leaders should always think about is that HR really is a strategic function, right? And Cornerstone has done a great job of viewing it as such, I think, because we've always understood the importance of people to our long-term success. And I think it's important for CEOs to drive that message with their leaders, to not look at HR as just a tactical function that is doing certain tasks for leaders, but to look at it as a strategic function or a strategic business partner to leaders across the organization. With respect to HR, I mean, I think it's really important for HR to actively engage with functional leaders across the business, right? So really be partners and not just be task managers for those functional leaders, but actually partner with them, take the time to understand what their business objectives are, and then align what you do from a talent acquisition strategy perspective or an employee experience perspective to those business objectives. That's the best way, I think, to create strong alignment between C-level executives and HR leaders, or HR, members of the HR teams, is to really show that your understanding of where that C-level executive is trying to take their respective area of the business and trying to mold your strategy with them in accordance with that.
So I'm going to get a little bit more tactical here because I feel like, we're talking about big picture strategies, but in the reality for HR or hiring managers every day, they are being impacted by hard to fill positions. So this is more short term than long term. And so the current talent marketplace is extremely competitive. And so you're kind of balancing, trying to bring the new people in, whether it's internal or external, and then maintain morale when workloads are being shifted. So how do you think that we work through this? Is it training, like specific initiatives, maybe taking people internally, helping them grow like you're talking about, or is there another solution?
Well, I mean, I think I'm going to plug training for a moment, just because I know how important it's been to my own career and how important it is to, millennials and just other folks who are entering the workforce today, or trying to build their careers in the workforce today. They, people want to learn. They're continuously looking to develop, and having access to good training is incredibly important, especially as a mid-sized company, because you know that larger companies are investing in developing and training their employees. Obviously, you're continuously competing with those kinds of companies to both attract and retain talent. And so I think it's important for small and mid-sized companies to invest in training and put their employees in a position where they can continuously develop. But what I would say, generally, is that there isn't a cookie cutter approach to how you can maintain high morale on your teams, right? I really think it's important for organizations to do their work, talk to their employees, understand what their pain points are. And again, as I said earlier, those could be different on different teams or in different parts of the world, and that's okay. But understanding what those pain points are and then molding your strategy to align with that is really, really important. Training, I think, is always going to be a part of it, which is why I mentioned that first. But I think it's also important to, do things sometimes, with certain teams that I have, I'll do different things than I will do with others. So I have, one team that our SMB team has a lot of younger employees, employees that are in their 20s. And so some of the activities or things that I do with them to keep their morale high are very different than what I would do with some of my teams that have more seasoned, experienced employees that have, been doing what they've been doing for a very long time. So I really think it's important to, again, make sure you as a business leader, as an employer, take the time to get feedback from your employees and understand what their pain points are, and then mold your strategy to that. And that's going to include training. It's going to include, different types of activities that you'll do with your employees. It's going to maybe include things like the development day that I talked about earlier. We do that in certain parts of the world as well, because certain organizations or certain, teams in Asia Pacific and Japan and EMEA really enjoy it. Other teams, they don't necessarily always get as much value out of it because the culture is just different, or they don't have enough people that are present in their region to be able to do an effective development day, right? So I think it's important to just understand, what your employees are looking for, and take the time to think about strategies that align with those interests or those objectives for your employees.
I love it. So customize your approach, feedback, and then making time to talk and get to know your employees so that you can build a customized training program or whatever they need to be able to feel fulfilled and want to do their best work at your organization.
Exactly. And I think it's also important for you as an employer to show or demonstrate that you care, right? I mean, I think some organizations, I think every organization understands that having a strong employee experience is important, but they don't always demonstrate that and show their employees that they're looking to actively optimize that experience or adjust that experience based on what the employees are looking for. So I think it's important for employers to show that they care, and also to, again, get feedback from employees and use that feedback to mold the strategy, because you as an employer can think whatever you want to think about what's most important to your employees, but what's most important is that it actually is important to them, and that's only going to, that understanding is only going to come to you if you actually take the time to get the feedback with them, talk to them one-on-one, and understand, what their pain points are and what they're looking for out of their experience with you.
Fantastic. Well, Chirag, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Where can people go to learn more about you and then Cornerstone On Demand?
So they can go to our website. It's www.csod.com. There's a ton of information about all of our different products on the website, and there's some information about me as well if anyone cares to read about that. But we've got a great set of products, and our history at Cornerstone has been in learning, and so that's why I talked so much today about learning, is because that's something that is very near and dear to my heart, but to everyone here at Cornerstone. That is what we spend our time thinking about every day, is how we can more effectively develop and train employees all over the world. We've got about 40 million people using our platform today, and that number continues to grow. And it makes me excited about coming to work every day, because we're not only building a business, but we're actually making employees more successful at their job. So I encourage everyone to take a look, and hopefully there is an opportunity for Cornerstone to work together with many of your listeners in the future.
Awesome. Well, we'll link to Chirag's LinkedIn profile so that you can connect with him directly, but also link to Cornerstone On Demand where you can go and learn more. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.
In our employee life cycle, employee engagement isn't just a nice to have. It's crucial for company success in a rapidly changing talent marketplace. The competition for talent is intense. I don't have to tell you that, And the pressure on HR leaders to keep current employees happy and engaged is just as strong. I'm so glad I've had the opportunity to sit down with Chirag and talk to him about how we can do better in supporting employee initiatives that work for the long-term health of our companies as well as our employees. Thank you for joining the Workology podcast, sponsored by Clear Company. This podcast is for the disruptive workplace leader who's tired of the status quo. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill. Until next time, visit workology.com to listen to all our previous podcast episodes.